The crystal glasses chimed as my sister Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her flute, her voice carrying across the upscale restaurant with that particular tone of manufactured concern that always made my skin crawl. Well, everyone, I'd just like to toast my little sister Riley for finding her own unique path in life. The laughter that rippled through our family's table felt like needles against my skin as 20 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. My name is Riley Winters, and this was supposed to be a simple celebration dinner for my 32nd birthday. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Instead, it had turned into another opportunity for my sister to remind everyone present, our parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and her investment banker husband, Derek, that I was the family disappointment. The black sheep who lived in a trailer on a dusty patch of land outside of Silvercreek, while the rest of the Winters family occupied various luxury homes throughout the affluent neighborhoods of Westlake. I forced a smile and raised my water glass. I couldn't afford to waste good champagne, while Vanessa continued her backhanded toast. I mean, we all have different definitions of success, right? Vanessa's perfectly highlighted blonde hair caught the light as she tilted her head in that practiced way she had perfected over years of being the golden child. Some of us aim for corner offices and vacation homes in Aspen, and others. She gestured vaguely in my direction. Find fulfillment in simpler things. Hear, hear, Derek chimed in, raising his glass. My brother-in-law looked every inch the successful financier in his tailored suit, that probably cost more than 3 months of my living expenses. To different paths. My mother Eleanor, ever the peacekeeper, jumped in with forced brightness. Riley's always had an independent spirit. Remember how she used to collect rocks instead of dolls? Great. Now we were reminiscing about my childhood eccentricities. I took a long sip of water, wishing it were something stronger. Speaking of your living situation, my father George said, clearing his throat uncomfortably. Dad had built his real estate empire from nothing. And to him, my lifestyle wasn't just puzzling, it was practically heretical. Have you given any more thought to that job offer at the firm? Marketing department still has a spot for you. Before I could answer, Vanessa interjected, Oh, Dad, Riley's not interested in corporate life. She's happy with her. She paused, searching for the word that would sound supportive while still making it clear how pathetic she found my choices. Freedom. I felt a warm hand cover mine under the table. Mace, my partner of 3 years, gave my fingers a gentle squeeze. His quiet support was the only thing making this dinner bearable. Actually, I said, finding my voice, I'm really busy with my land restoration project. We're making progress on the creek bed rehabilitation. Derek snorted into his wine glass. Land restoration. On a trailer park lot. That's innovative. It's not a trailer park, I corrected for what felt like the 1,000th time. It's private land. 15 acres of nothing but dust and scrub brush, Vanessa added helpfully. But it's all yours, right? That's something. Our cousin Brent, who worked for my father's company, leaned forward with exaggerated interest. So what exactly do you do out there all day? Besides, watching the tumbleweeds roll by? The table erupted in laughter again, and I felt my cheeks burn. Mace's hand tightened on mine, and I could feel the tension in his grip. At 35, Mace Thomas had the patience of a saint, and the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was. He wore his usual outfit, clean but worn jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and work boots. Next to Derek's Italian suit, he looked like he'd wandered in from another world. We should probably get going, I said, pushing back from the table. It's a long drive back. Oh, sweetie, don't leave yet, my mother protested. We haven't even had cake. Let her go, Mom, Vanessa said with a dismissive wave. Riley's always been early to bed, early to rise. Part of that simple, wholesome lifestyle, right, sis? I stood up, Mace following suit beside me. Thanks for the dinner, I said, aiming for gracious but probably landing somewhere around strained. It was memorable. My father pulled out his wallet and extracted several crisp $100 bills. Here, he said, holding them out to me. Gas money. I know it's a long drive back to your place. The bills hung between us. An offering and an insult rolled into one. I stared at the money, feeling a familiar mixture of anger and humiliation bubble up inside me. We're fine, Dad, I said quietly. But thanks. Just take it, Riley, Vanessa sighed. It's not like you couldn't use it. Mace stepped forward then, his voice low but clear. Sir, we appreciate the gesture, but we're doing just fine on our own. My father's eyebrows shot up, surprised at Mace's interjection. In the 3 years Mace and I had been together, he had rarely spoken up during these family gatherings, preferring to observe rather than engage. This small act of defiance seemed to catch everyone off guard. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Well, my mother said, filling the awkward silence, at least take some cake home with you. 20 minutes later we were in Mace's truck, a battered but reliable Ford F-150, heading back towards Silvercreek. The cake box sat between us on the bench seat, a peace offering that couldn't begin to make up for the evening's barbs. I'm sorry, I said as we hit the highway, the city lights receding behind us. They were worse than usual tonight. Mace's profile was illuminated by the dashboard lights, his expression thoughtful. They don't know you, Riley. They've never tried to. I leaned my head against the window, watching the world slide by. Sometimes I think they're right, you know. Maybe I am just deluding myself, living in a trailer on worthless land, pretending I'm making a difference with my little environmental projects. Mace was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the rumble of tires against asphalt and the soft country music playing on the radio. Finally, he said, Do you remember what you told me when we first met? When I asked why you bought that land, when you could have had a nice apartment in the city. I smiled despite myself. I said that some things have value that can't be measured in square footage or property taxes. Exactly. Mace reached over and took my hand. Your family measures success in stock portfolios in square footage. They can't understand any other metric. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the miles rolling away beneath us. I thought about the first time I'd brought Mace to a family function. A 4th of July barbecue at Vanessa and Derek's lakeside mansion. He'd been so out of place among the designer sundresses and polo shirts, with his work-worn hands and quiet demeanor. Vanessa had taken one look at him and immediately classified him as another of Riley's mistakes. What does he do again? She'd asked later, cornering me in the kitchen. He's a geologist, I'd answered, specializes in land reclamation and water systems. She'd blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. A geologist? With those hands? He looks like he digs ditches for a living. He does work with his hands, I'd confirmed. Not everyone sits in an office all day. Vanessa had given me that pitying look she'd perfected over years of being the successful daughter. Oh, Riley, you always did have a thing for strays. That comment had stung worse than any of the others, because Mace was the furthest thing from a stray. He was the most centered, purposeful person I'd ever met. But in the Winters family worldview, anyone without the right address, the right clothes, and the right connections was automatically classified as less than. As we turned onto the long dirt road that led to our land, I felt the familiar sense of coming home wash over me. The headlights illuminated the simple gate with its hand-carved wooden sign, Winter Haven. Beyond the gate, nestled among a grove of old oak trees, sat our home, a double-wide trailer that we'd renovated ourselves, with a wraparound porch Mace had built by hand. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, paid for free and clear. No mortgage, no debt. Home sweet home, Mace said as he parked the truck. The night air was cool and fresh as we stepped out, nothing like the recycled air conditioning of the upscale restaurant we'd left behind. Above us, the sky was a tapestry of stars, unobscured by city lights. The kind of view my sister's $3 million house could never provide. Inside, our home was simple but comfortable. Open concept living space, with large windows to bring the outside in. Furniture that was chosen for comfort rather than style. Bookshelves filled with texts on geology, ecology, and land management.
It wasn't the kind of place featured in architectural magazines, but it was perfect for us. "Tea?" Mace asked, already filling the kettle. I nodded, sinking onto our couch and kicking off my shoes, the only pair of heels I owned, reserved exclusively for family functions. "Do you ever wish we lived somewhere else? Somewhere more impressive?" Mace leaned against the kitchen counter, his expression thoughtful. "Not once," he said finally. "Not ever." As the kettle whistled, I found myself thinking about the path that had led me here. I'd always been the odd one out in my family. While Vanessa had followed in our father's footsteps, getting her MBA and climbing the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency, I'd pursued environmental science, fascinated by ecosystems and sustainability. When our grandmother died 5 years ago, leaving me a modest inheritance, everyone had expected me to use it as a down payment on a condo in the city. Instead, I'd purchased 15 acres of supposedly worthless land outside Silvercreek, land that had been abused by previous owners, its creek contaminated, its soil depleted. "You're throwing your money away," my father had said when I showed him the property. "This land will never be worth anything." "Maybe not to you," I'd replied. Now, 5 years later, I was still here, slowly rehabilitating the land, working as an environmental consultant to make ends meet, and living in a trailer that had become more of a home than any place I'd ever known. Mace brought over 2 mugs of herbal tea and settled beside me on the couch. "Your sister was in rare form tonight," he observed. I snorted. "Vanessa lives to remind me of my poor life choices. I think it makes her feel better about her own." "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "She and Derek look perfect on the outside. Big house, fancy cars, prestigious jobs. But I've never seen either of them truly happy. Not the way we are." Mace considered this, blowing on his tea. "You think they know that? That they're not happy?" "I think Vanessa suspects it, which is why she works so hard to convince herself that her way is the only right way to live." I took a sip of tea, letting the warmth spread through me. "Did you see how she reacted when I mentioned the creek restoration? Like the very idea of caring about something other than money was absurd." "Some people can't see value unless it comes with a price tag," Mace said simply. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our tea and unwinding from the tension of the evening. Through the window I could see the outline of the hills against the night sky, the land that had called to me from the first moment I saw it. "I got a call from Dr. Abernathy today," Mace said after a while. I perked up. James Abernathy was a leading hydrogeologist who specialized in groundwater systems. "What did he say?" "The preliminary tests were positive. The aquifer is exactly where we thought it would be, and initial quality tests are promising." A surge of excitement ran through me. "So we were right?" Mace nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "We were right. There's a substantial freshwater aquifer running beneath the property. Untapped and pristine." I leaned back, letting the implications sink in. When we'd first purchased the land, most people thought we were crazy. The previous owners had used it for illegal dumping, and the visible creek had been contaminated with runoff from a nearby factory. But Mace, with his background in geology, had suspected there might be more to the property than met the eye. "How soon before we know the full extent?" I asked. "Dr. Abernathy wants to run more comprehensive tests next week. If everything checks out, we could be looking at one of the largest untapped freshwater resources in the county." The significance wasn't lost on me. In an area increasingly plagued by drought and water restrictions, a clean, sustainable water source was more valuable than gold. "Vanessa would have a heart attack if she knew," I said, unable to suppress a small, vindictive smile. "All those years of mocking me for living on worthless land." Mace's expression grew serious. "Riley, if the aquifer is as extensive as we think, We need to be careful. There are plenty of people who would do anything to get their hands on a water source like this. Including my family, I said, the realization hitting me. My father hadn't built his real estate empire by missing opportunities, and water rights in our drought-prone region were becoming increasingly valuable. Especially your family, Mace agreed. Which is why I think we should keep this quiet until we have all the facts and a solid plan for protection and sustainable use. I nodded, the excitement tempered by caution.
You're right. The last thing we need is corporate interests swooping in before we can secure the proper environmental protections. Mace set down his mug and took my hands in his. This could change everything, Riley. Not just for us, but for the whole region. Properly managed, this aquifer could provide sustainable water for generations. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, but it felt right. This was why I'd been drawn to this seemingly unremarkable piece of land. Some deep intuitive understanding that there was more here than met the eye. We'll do it right, I promised. Whatever happens, we'll make sure this resource is protected. Mace smiled, lifting my hand to press a kiss against my knuckles. I never doubted that for a second. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I found myself thinking about the stark contrast between my life and Vanessa's. From the outside, she had everything: the prestigious career, the wealthy husband, the sprawling home in the best neighborhood. She was the daughter who had followed our father's blueprint for success to the letter. And yet, for all her material wealth, Vanessa never seemed content. There was always something more to acquire, some new status symbol to chase. Her marriage to Derek seemed more like a business partnership than a love match, both of them more concerned with appearances than genuine connection. Meanwhile, here I was, living in a trailer on land that most people would consider worthless, with a man who owned exactly 2 dress shirts and had never set foot in a country club. By society's standards, by my family's standards, I was the failure, the cautionary tale. But I had something Vanessa didn't: peace. The satisfaction of living according to my values, rather than someone else's expectations. The joy of working to heal a piece of land that had been abused and discarded. And now, potentially, the opportunity to protect and share a precious resource in a responsible way. As I drifted off to sleep, Mace's arm around my waist and the gentle sounds of the night filtering through our open window, I couldn't help but wonder what Vanessa would say if she knew what lay beneath my worthless land. Would it change how she saw me? Would anything ever change how she saw me? The answer came sooner than I expected. 3 weeks later, I received a text message from my mother. Emergency family meeting. Your father's house. Saturday at 2. Please come. It's important. What do you think it's about? I asked Mace, showing him the message. He frowned, setting down the soil sample he'd been examining. We'd been working with Dr. Abernathy for the past several weeks, carefully mapping the aquifer and developing a sustainable management plan. The results had exceeded even our most optimistic expectations. The aquifer was vast, pristine, and remarkably accessible. Could be anything, Mace said, but his expression was guarded. Has your mother ever texted you about an emergency family meeting before? I shook my head. No. Usually, she just calls to guilt me into showing up for the regular family gatherings. When was the last time you spoke with any of them? Not since my birthday dinner last month. I'd been so busy with the aquifer research that I'd let my already infrequent family communications lapse even further. Mace wiped his hands on a rag, his expression thoughtful. It might be nothing, but have you checked the county records recently to see if anyone's been looking into our property? A chill ran down my spine. You think this could be about the land? I think it's a possibility we should consider. Your father is in real estate, and water rights are becoming increasingly valuable in this region. I pulled out my laptop and navigated to the county assessor's website. A few clicks later, my suspicions were confirmed. Someone requested property records for our parcel 2 weeks ago. The cold feeling intensified. It's not a name I recognize, but it could be someone working for your father, Mace finished. Or for Derek's investment firm. I closed the laptop, a mixture of anger and anxiety churning in my stomach. So what do we do? Ignore the meeting? Mace was quiet for a moment, considering. No, he finally said. I think we go. We hear what they have to say, but we don't reveal anything about the aquifer unless we absolutely have to. Saturday arrived with an unseasonable heat wave, pushing temperatures into the high 90s. As we drove to my father's sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion in Westlake Hills, I couldn't help but note the irony of discussing water resources on a day when the region's drought was so painfully evident. The normally lush landscaping along the wealthy neighborhood streets showed signs of stress, brown patches appearing despite the expensive irrigation systems. Remember, Mace said as we pulled into my father's circular driveway, we don't know for certain what this meeting is about. Let them do the talking. I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. And if it is about the land? Then we listen very carefully to what they're offering and why. He reached over and squeezed my hand. But no matter what, remember that we hold the cards here. They just don't know it yet. My father's house was exactly as I remembered it. Ostentatious, immaculately maintained, and utterly impersonal. It looked like a spread from Architectural Digest, rather than a home where people actually lived. As we approached the front door, it swung open to reveal my mother, her expression strained despite her perfect makeup and designer outfit. Riley, darling, she said, air-kissing my cheek. And Mace. Thank you both for coming. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Everyone's in the living room. We followed her through the marble-floored foyer into the formal living room, where my father, Vanessa, and Derek were arranged like actors on a stage. My father stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel in what I recognized as his power pose. Vanessa and Derek sat side by side on one of the cream-colored sofas, both dressed as if for a business meeting despite it being the weekend. Riley, my father said, his voice carefully modulated. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I nodded, choosing to stand rather than take a seat. Mace positioned himself beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. Mom said it was an emergency. Yes, well, my father glanced at Vanessa, who straightened almost imperceptibly. We have a family situation that requires discussion. What kind of situation? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I knew exactly what kind. Derek cleared his throat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his normally impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. I'll get right to the point. My firm has encountered some financial difficulties. What Derek means, Vanessa interjected, her voice tight, is that some investments haven't performed as expected. Significant investments. I glanced at Mace, who maintained a neutral expression. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But I'm not sure what this has to do with me. My father stepped forward, his expression grave. The situation affects all of us, Riley. Your mother and I had invested substantially in Derek's fund, as had many of our friends and business associates. The implications were clear. How bad is it? Bad, Derek admitted, running a hand through his hair. We're looking at potential losses in the millions, and possible legal repercussions. Legal as in, Mace asked, speaking for the first time. As in the SEC is asking questions, my father said curtly. Questions none of us want to be answering in a public forum. The room fell silent as I processed this. My perfect sister and her financial genius husband had apparently steered the family into disaster. Under other circumstances, I might have felt a vindictive satisfaction, but the grim expressions on everyone's faces suggested this was more serious than I'd initially thought. Again, I said, I'm sorry to hear that, but I still don't understand why you've called us here. Vanessa stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floor like a metronome marking time. We need to liquidate assets, she said, her voice brittle. Quickly and quietly. All of our properties are already leveraged, my father added, except one. And there it was. The real reason for this family emergency meeting. My land, I said flatly. Your land, my father confirmed. 15 acres outside Silvercreek. Currently valued at approximately $150,000, based on comparable sales in the area. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. If they only knew what lay beneath that supposedly worthless dirt. And you want me to sell it, I said, not bothering to phrase it as a question. We want you to consider selling it, my mother corrected gently, for the good of the family. The good of the family, I repeated. The same family that spent years mocking me for living there? The same family that called it worthless dirt and a waste of my inheritance? Vanessa turned to face me, her perfect composure finally cracking. This isn't the time for petty grievances, Riley. We're talking about our parents' retirement, my daughter's college fund, our family's reputation. My grievances aren't petty, I said, feeling a lifetime of accumulated hurt and anger rising to the surface. They're the result of years of being treated like the family disappointment because I chose a different path. A path you all ridiculed at every opportunity. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? I turned to her. When was the last time any of you showed genuine interest in my life? In what Mace and I are building together? When was the last time you asked about my work without it being a setup for a joke or a comparison to Vanessa's real career? The silence that followed was answer enough. Look, Derek said, his tone placating. Whatever issues you have with the family dynamics, the reality is that we're in a crisis situation. The land is your asset, and of course, you would be compensated fairly for it. Fairly, I repeated. And what's fair, in your estimation? My father stepped forward. All business now. We've had the property appraised. Given its remote location and lack of development, the most we can offer is $175,000. That's $25,000 above market value, which I think is more than generous. Mace shifted beside me, and I could feel his tension even without looking at him. $175,000 for land that, with its pristine aquifer, was worth millions. And what about our home, I asked. The trailer where we live? Vanessa waved a dismissive hand. We'd help you relocate, of course. There are plenty of similar accommodations available elsewhere. The condescension in her voice was the final straw. All the years of being looked down upon, of having my choices questioned and ridiculed, crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. No, I said simply. No, my father repeated, as if he couldn't possibly have heard correctly. Riley, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. The answer is no. I'm not selling my land. Vanessa's face flushed with anger. You selfish little... She caught herself, visibly reining in her temper. Riley, this isn't just about you. This is about the entire family. Now it's about family, I said bitterly. Now that you need something from me. Where was this family loyalty when you were mocking my trailer trash lifestyle at every opportunity? That's not fair, Derek interjected. No one called you trailer trash. Not in those exact words, perhaps, Mace said quietly. But the sentiment was clear enough. My father turned to Mace, his expression hardening. With all due respect, this is a family matter. Mace is family, I said firmly. More family than some of the people in this room have ever been to me. Riley, please, my mother pleaded, tears welling in her perfectly made-up eyes. Just think about it. We're not asking you to decide right now. Actually, my father countered, we are. The situation is time-sensitive. We need an answer today. I looked around the room at these people who shared my blood but had never truly accepted my choices or respected my values. For years, I'd sought their approval, hurt by their dismissal but still hoping for their acceptance. Now they wanted me to sacrifice my home, my work, my dreams, all to fix their mistakes. The answer is still no, I said, my voice steady. I won't sell the land. Not now, not ever. You ungrateful, Vanessa started, but Derek put a restraining hand on her arm. There must be some arrangement we can come to, he said, his businessman's instincts kicking in. A partial sale, perhaps? Or a loan against the property? I shook my head. The land isn't for sale or leverage. At any price. My father's face darkened with anger. You don't understand what's at stake here, Riley. This is about people's lives, about our family's future. What about my future? I countered. What about the life Mace and I have built? Does that count for nothing because it doesn't fit your definition of success? A trailer on 15 acres of scrubland is hardly a legacy worth protecting, Vanessa snapped. This is real life, Riley, not some environmental fantasy camp. The words hit their mark, echoing the countless times she'd dismissed my choices as childish or naive. But this time, instead of feeling hurt, I felt a strange calm settling over me. You have no idea what real life is, Vanessa, I said quietly. You've spent so long chasing status and appearances that you've lost sight of what actually matters. How dare you? No, how dare you? I cut her off. How dare you come to me now, after years of contempt, and expect me to bail you out? How dare you ask me to give up everything I care about because you and Derek made bad investments? The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Finally, my father spoke, his voice dangerously controlled. I'm disappointed in you, Riley. I thought you'd have more loyalty to this family. Loyalty goes both ways, Dad, I replied, moving toward the door. And this family's loyalty has always been conditional on following your approved path. Well, I chose a different one, and it's the best decision I ever made. If you walk out that door, Vanessa said, her voice shaking with anger, don't expect us to be there when your little sustainable living experiment fails. When you realize that your worthless patch of dirt can't provide the life you deserve. I paused at the threshold, looking back at her. That's just it, Vanessa. It already has. With that, Mace and I left, the sound of my mother's quiet sobbing following us out the door. The drive home from my parents' house was thick with unspoken thoughts. Mace kept his eyes on the road, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. I stared out the window, watching the landscape transform from manicured suburban perfection to the wilder, more natural terrain I'd come to love. You okay? Mace finally asked as we turned onto the dirt road leading to our property. I think so, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. I should be upset, but honestly, I just feel free. Mace glanced at me, his expression softening. Free? Like I've finally stopped hoping for their approval. Like I've finally accepted that they'll never see me, the real me. I let out a long breath. It's sad, but it's also liberating. As our trailer came into view, nestled among the oak trees with the evening sun gilding its metal roof, I felt a fierce surge of pride. This was our home. Not a stepping stone, not a temporary situation, but a deliberate choice that aligned with our values and vision. They'll be back, Mace said quietly as he parked the truck. When they realize you're serious about not selling, they'll try different tactics. I nodded, knowing he was right. Let them try. That night, we sat on our porch watching fireflies rise from the tall grass near the creek. The air was sweet with the scent of wild honeysuckle, and a chorus of frogs provided nature's soundtrack. I tried to imagine Vanessa here, with her designer clothes and carefully maintained image. She would see nothing but isolation and inconvenience, missing entirely the peace, the connection to something larger than human concerns. We should call Dr. Abernathy tomorrow, Mace said, breaking into my thoughts. Get the final paperwork in order for the Aquifer Protection Trust. The Aquifer Protection Trust had been our idea, a legal structure to ensure that the water resource beneath our land would be managed sustainably, regardless of who owned the property in the future. It was complicated, expensive legal work, but essential for our vision. I'll call first thing, I agreed. And we should probably accelerate the timeline for the environmental survey. If my family is getting desperate, they might try less direct methods to force our hand. Mace nodded grimly. I've already spoken with Maria at the Environmental Protection Agency. She's sending a team out next week to begin the official assessment. The EPA assessment was another layer of protection. By documenting the ecological significance of the aquifer, we could potentially secure federal protections, that would make it virtually impossible for commercial interests to exploit the resource. "Do you think we should tell them?" I asked, the question that had been weighing on me since the confrontation. About the aquifer, I mean. Mace was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Not yet," he finally said. "Not until the legal protections are in place. Your father didn't build his empire by respecting environmental concerns, and Derek's financial troubles make him dangerous." I knew he was right, but part of me still struggled with the deception. Not because my family deserved the truth, but because keeping such a significant secret felt contrary to the values of transparency and community benefit that had guided our work. "Once the trust is established and the EPA assessment is complete, we'll reveal everything," Mace promised, reading my thoughts. "But right now, we need to protect the resource first." The next morning, I woke early to the sound of birds greeting the dawn. Mace was already up, his side of the bed empty. I found him at the kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by papers. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, putting on the kettle for tea. He rubbed his eyes, looking up with a tired smile. "Too much on my mind. I've been going over the test results from the eastern boundary again. The aquifer extends further than we initially thought." I leaned over his shoulder, examining the hydrogeological maps that had become our primary focus these past months. The blue shading indicating the aquifer's presence stretched well beyond our property lines. "Does this change anything for the protection plan?" I asked. Mace frowned. "It complicates things. Ideally, we'd want to secure the adjoining properties to ensure comprehensive protection of the entire system." "That would take money we don't have," I pointed out, stating the obvious. "I know. But I've been thinking." He shuffled through some papers, pulling out a letter from the state's Conservation Trust. "The grant application. If we emphasize the expanded scope of the aquifer, we might qualify for the higher funding tier. The Conservation Trust grant was a long shot, highly competitive, and typically awarded to larger, more established organizations. But if successful, it would provide up to $500,000 for land acquisition, specifically for water resource protection." "Worth a try," I agreed, scanning the letter's requirements. "The deadline's this Friday. We'll need to revise the entire proposal." "Already started," Mace said, gesturing to his laptop screen where a draft was open. "We've got the science on our side. Now we just need to make the case compelling enough for the review board." I squeezed his shoulder, overwhelmed with gratitude for this man who matched my passion with his own quiet determination. "I'll help after I call Dr. Abernathy." The call to our attorney went better than expected. The paperwork for the Aquifer Protection Trust was nearly complete, requiring only our signatures and the final hydrogeological assessment to be attached as an exhibit. "We can have everything finalized by the end of next week," Dr. Abernathy assured me. "Once it's filed with the county, the protection covenant will run with the land in perpetuity." "And it can't be challenged?" I asked, voicing my deepest concern. "No legal document is completely challenge-proof," he admitted. "But we've structured this with multiple layers of protection. Anyone attempting to overturn it would face years of litigation, with very slim chances of success." After hanging up, I joined Mace at the table, feeling a surge of hope despite the lingering tension from yesterday's confrontation. We worked side by side throughout the morning, revising the grant proposal, compiling data for the EPA assessment, and finalizing details for the Protection Trust. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text message. I expected it to be from Dr. Abernathy with an update on the paperwork. Instead, I saw my sister's name on the screen. "Vanessa," I said aloud, my stomach tightening. "She wants to meet. Just the two of us. Says she wants to clear the air." Mace looked up from his laptop, his expression cautious. "When?" "Today. She suggests that cafe in town, the one by the bookstore." I frowned at the phone. "What do you think?" "I think it's a trap," Mace said bluntly, "but I also think you should go." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by his response. "Hear me out," he continued. "You know your sister better than anyone. If she's trying to manipulate you, you'll see through it. And if by some miracle she genuinely wants to repair your relationship, well, he shrugged. That would be good, wouldn't it? I considered his words, realizing he was right. Despite everything, part of me still hoped for reconciliation with my family, not on their terms, but on the basis of mutual respect. And even if Vanessa was simply executing another strategy to get what they wanted, it would be useful to know what approach they were taking now. I'll meet her, I decided, typing a response. But I won't make any promises or agreements without talking to you first. Mace nodded, satisfied. That's all I ask. 2 hours later, I found myself sitting at a small table in Riverbank Cafe, nursing an herbal tea, and waiting for my sister to arrive. The cafe was one of my favorite spots in town, a locally owned business with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and the best scones in the county. It was the antithesis of the sleek, upscale establishments Vanessa typically frequented. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the perfectly coiffed businesswoman with designer clothes and immaculate makeup. This Vanessa wore minimal makeup, simple jeans, and a loose blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail, and for the first time in years, I could see the sister I'd grown up with before the relentless pursuit of status had transformed her. "Riley," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, unsure what to make of this transformed version of my sister. "You look different." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Is that a polite way of saying I look terrible?" "No, just less artificial." She winced slightly, but didn't argue the point. "Can I get you something else?" she asked, gesturing to my half-empty teacup. "I'm fine, but go ahead if you want something." Vanessa shook her head. "I can't stay long. Tiffany has a violin lesson at 4, and I promised I'd take her." An awkward silence fell between us. I waited, curious to see what approach she would take. Would it be emotional manipulation? A business proposition? Some combination of both? "I owe you an apology," she finally said, her voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear her. Of all the openings I had anticipated, this wasn't one of them. "What?" "An apology," she repeated, meeting my eyes directly. "For yesterday, for my birthday dinner, for a lot of things, actually." I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity or calculation, but found only exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine regret. "What brought this on?" I asked, still suspicious. Vanessa sighed, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "When you left yesterday, Dad and Derek immediately started strategizing other ways to pressure you into selling. Legal challenges, easement disputes, even trying to get the property rezoned to decrease its value." "That sounds about right," I said, unsurprised. "But all I could think about was the look on your face when you talked about the life you've built. There was something there I haven't seen in the mirror for a very long time." She paused, struggling to find the words. "Contentment, I guess. Certainty." I remained silent, unwilling to make this easier for her. "It made me realize how unhappy I've been," she continued. "How empty everything feels despite all the trappings of success." Her voice caught slightly. "And how terribly I've treated you for choosing a different path." "Why now, Vanessa?" I asked, the question that had been burning in my mind. "Is this genuine remorse? Or just another strategy to get what you want?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her, but nodded in acknowledgement of the fair question. "I deserve that. And I don't expect you to believe me right away. But I'm here because—" She took a deep breath. "Because regardless of what happens with the financial situation, I don't want to lose my sister. I've already lost too much of myself." I studied her, looking for tells of deception but found none. Either Vanessa had become an exceptional actress, or she was experiencing a genuine moment of self-reflection. "What about the land?" I asked directly. "Are you still expecting me to sell it to bail out the family?" She shook her head. "No, that's between you and Dad and Derek now. I'm stepping back from that fight." "Just like that? After yesterday's dramatics?" "I'm not saying I understand your attachment to the place," she admitted. "But I respect that it's your decision to make, not mine or anyone else's." I sat back, genuinely surprised by this turn of events. "Does Dad know you're here?" And he wouldn't approve if he did. She glanced at her watch, then back at me. Look, I know one conversation doesn't erase years of, well, everything, but I'd like a chance to try again, to get to know the sister I've been too blind to see. The sincerity in her voice was compelling, but years of conditioning had taught me to be wary of sudden changes of heart, especially where my family was concerned. I'd like that too, I said carefully. But I need time, and proof that this isn't just another manipulation. Vanessa nodded, accepting this without argument. That's fair. More than fair, actually. She stood up, gathering her purse. I should go. Tiffany's waiting. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Vanessa? She paused, looking back. Bring Tiffany out to the land sometime. There's a family of foxes that dens near the creek. She might enjoy seeing them. A genuine smile spread across her face, not the polished, perfect smile she wore for social occasions, but something more real and vulnerable. She'd love that. Thank you. After she left, I remained at the cafe, trying to process what had just happened. Was it possible that Vanessa was actually having a genuine change of heart? Or was this an elaborate performance designed to lower my defenses? My phone buzzed with a text from Mace. How did it go? I typed back. Strangely well. She apologized, seemed sincere. I'm still processing. His response came quickly. Trust your instincts. But verify everything. Wise advice, as always. Mace had a gift for cutting through emotional complexity to the practical heart of matters. As I drove home, I found myself torn between hope and skepticism. The sister I'd glimpsed today reminded me of the Vanessa I'd known in childhood, before our father's expectations and society's pressures had hardened her into someone I barely recognized. Could that person still exist beneath the carefully constructed facade? And even if she did, could our relationship ever recover from years of condescension and emotional distance? I was still pondering these questions when I turned onto our property and saw an unfamiliar black SUV parked beside our trailer. My heart raced as I pulled up behind it, instantly alert for trouble. Had my father sent someone to pressure us? Was this related to Vanessa's sudden appearance of goodwill? Before I could call Mace, the trailer door opened, and he emerged, followed by a woman in a business suit carrying a leather portfolio. They were talking animatedly, both looking excited about something. I approached cautiously. Mace? He turned, his face breaking into a wide smile. Riley, you're just in time. This is Sandra Chen from the State Water Resources Board. Sandra, this is my partner, Riley Winters. The woman extended her hand, her grip firm and professional. Ms. Winters, it's a pleasure to meet you. Mace has been showing me your hydrogeological surveys. Impressive work. I shook her hand automatically, shooting a questioning look at Mace. We had planned to keep the aquifer quiet until all our legal protections were in place. What was he doing showing our data to a state official? Sandra reached out to us, Mace explained, reading my concern. The preliminary paperwork we filed with the county for the Protection Trust flagged their system. Apparently, they've been monitoring this region for potential groundwater resources. Quote, we've suspected a significant aquifer might exist in this area for some time, Sandra added, but lacked the resources for a comprehensive survey. Your work has essentially done our job for us. And that's good? I asked cautiously. Very good, she confirmed. The State Water Resources Board has been tasked with identifying and protecting strategic water reserves, especially in drought-vulnerable regions like this one. Your aquifer could qualify for our crucial resource protection program. Mace's excitement was now clear. The program provides substantial funding for conservation and protection measures, Riley, and legal backing that would make it virtually impossible for private interests to exploit the resource. It's a competitive program, Sandra cautioned, but based on what Mace has shown me, you have an excellent case. The combination of size, water quality, and your existing conservation efforts makes this a prime candidate. My mind was racing, trying to process this unexpected development. What would this mean for our land, for our home? You would retain full ownership, Sandra assured me. The program simply overlays additional protections and provides funding for ongoing conservation efforts. In fact, property owners are considered essential partners in the protection strategy. And the timeline? I asked, thinking of my father's determination to acquire the land. If everything checks out with our technical team's assessment, we could have preliminary approval within 30 days. Full protection would be implemented within 90 days. 90 days. Would that be soon enough to fend off whatever strategies my father and Derek were developing? There's more, Mace said, unable to contain his excitement. Show her, Sandra. The woman opened her portfolio and extracted a map, spreading it across the hood of her SUV. This is a satellite survey of the region, overlaid with our groundwater monitoring data. The blue shading indicates potential aquifer locations. I leaned in, studying the map. Our property was clearly outlined in red, sitting at what appeared to be the heart of a much larger blue-shaded area. The aquifer extends well beyond your property boundaries, Sandra explained. But your land sits at the critical recharge zone, essentially the heart of the system. That's why your conservation efforts are so important. And it makes your property extremely valuable from an ecological perspective, Mace added meaningfully. I looked up at him, suddenly understanding his excitement. This wasn't just about protecting our land and the water beneath it. This was about securing a powerful ally in what was likely to become a contentious battle with my family. What do you need from us? I asked Sandra. For now, just your permission to conduct a more thorough assessment. Our technical team would need access to the property for about a week. After that, if everything aligns with your findings, we'd move forward with the formal protection process. I exchanged a look with Mace, who nodded encouragingly. When can they start? I asked. Monday, if that works for you. Monday is perfect. After Sandra left with copies of our data and a signed access agreement, Mace and I sat on the porch steps, the weight of the day's events settling around us. That was unexpected, I said, still processing everything. In a good way, but still. Unexpected. I know, Mace agreed. I was as surprised as you when she showed up. But this could be the breakthrough we've been hoping for. With the State Water Resources Board involved, your father's options for forcing a sale become extremely limited. I leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I saw Vanessa today, I said, changing the subject. She apologized. For everything. Mace raised an eyebrow. Really? And you believe her? I'm not sure, I admitted. She seemed sincere. Different. But it's hard to trust after so many years of… well, you know. He nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. Time will tell. In the meantime, we focus on protecting the land and the aquifer. Speaking of which, I straightened, remembering another crucial detail. The grant application for the Conservation Trust. With the State Water Board's interest, should we revise our approach? Mace considered this. Actually, I think it strengthens our case. We can cite the state's preliminary assessment as additional validation of the resource's significance. We spent the rest of the evening refining the grant proposal, energized by the day's developments. Despite the looming confrontation with my father and Derek, I felt more optimistic than I had in weeks. With the State Water Resources Board's interest and the Aquifer Protection Trust nearing completion, we were building a formidable defense for our land and its precious resource. As we worked, I found myself thinking about Vanessa's visit and her apparent change of heart. Was it possible that amid all this conflict I might actually regain a sister? The thought was both hopeful and unsettling, like a door I'd long ago closed suddenly standing ajar. Do you think people can really change? I asked Mace as we prepared for bed later that night. Fundamentally change, I mean. He considered the question with his usual thoughtfulness. I think they can, but only when something forces them to confront the consequences of their choices. Some crisis or revelation that makes it impossible to continue as before. Like Derek's financial disaster, I suggested. Maybe. Or like seeing her sister stand firm for her values, refusing to be manipulated or bullied. He smiled. brushing a strand of hair from my face. You underestimate your own power, Riley. The example you set by living according to your principles, it affects people, even when they resist it. I thought about that as I drifted towards sleep. Had my quiet persistence, my refusal to abandon my values for their approval, actually impacted my family in ways I hadn't recognized? It seemed almost too much to hope for. But then again, the last 24 hours had brought plenty of unexpected developments. Perhaps this was simply one more surprise in a season of revelations. Whatever tomorrow brought, I knew one thing with certainty. The land beneath us, with its hidden treasure of pure water, was worth fighting for. Not just for its monetary value, which was substantial, but for what it represented. A future where resources were protected, not exploited. Where sustainability took precedence over profit. Where choices were guided by long-term vision rather than short-term gain. These were the values that had guided Mace and me from the beginning, even when they made us outliers in my family's world of status and acquisition. Now it seemed those same values might be our strongest defense against the storm that was surely coming. The technical team from the State Water Resources Board arrived early Monday morning, their white vans loaded with equipment I couldn't begin to identify. 5 specialists in matching polo shirts spread out across our property, setting up monitoring stations, taking soil samples, and conducting tests that looked straight out of a science fiction movie. "They're thorough," I commented to Mace as we watched from our porch, coffee mugs in hand. "They should be. If this aquifer is as significant as we believe, it could provide sustainable water for the entire county for generations." His expression was calm, but I could see the excitement dancing in his eyes. After years of quietly working toward this goal, watching professionals validate our findings felt like vindication. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Riley Winters. "Ms. Winters, this is Thomas Blackwood from Westlake Properties." The voice was smooth, professional. "I'm calling on behalf of a client who's interested in your land outside Silvercreek." My heart rate accelerated. Westlake Properties was my father's company. "My land isn't for sale, Mr. Blackwood." "I understand your reluctance," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "But my client is prepared to make an extremely generous offer. Well above market value." The answer is still no. "Perhaps we could meet to discuss." "There's nothing to discuss. The property is not for sale at any price." A brief pause. "Ms. Winters, my client is prepared to offer $350,000. That's more than double the current assessed value." The desperation was becoming clear now. They were escalating quickly, doubling their initial offer within days. "As I said, Mr. Blackwood, the property is not for sale. Please don't call again." I hung up before he could respond, my hands slightly shaky despite my firm words. "Your father?" Mace asked, having heard enough to understand. "Through a proxy. They've doubled their offer already." He nodded thoughtfully. "They're getting nervous. This is good." "Good?" "They're escalating." "Exactly." Mace set down his coffee mug. "If they're increasing their offer this dramatically, this quickly, it means they're running out of options. Legal challenges take time they don't have." I glanced at the state officials methodically documenting our land's hidden treasure. "And once the state verifies the aquifer, their options narrow even further," Mace confirmed. "Even your father can't fight the State Water Resources Board without significant repercussions." Later that afternoon, as the technical team packed up their first day's samples, the lead hydrogeologist approached us with a barely contained excitement. "Preliminary results are extremely promising," she said, removing her gloves. "The water quality is exceptional, nearly pristine, and the flow rate estimates suggest a much larger capacity than initially projected." "That's consistent with our findings," Mace said, his professional demeanor not quite masking his satisfaction. "I've been doing this for 15 years, she continued, "and I've never seen an undocumented aquifer of this quality and size. You're sitting on a treasure." "So the protection program?" I asked. "Based on what I've seen today, I'd say your application is a near certainty for approval." I'll need to complete the full assessment, of course, but… She smiled. I wouldn't worry. After she left, Mace pulled me into a tight embrace, lifting me off my feet in an uncharacteristic display of jubilation. We did it, he whispered against my hair. We actually did it. Not quite yet, I cautioned, though I couldn't help smiling at his enthusiasm. There's still paperwork, approval processes, but the hard part, proving the aquifer's significance, that's done. He set me down but kept his arms around my waist. The rest is just bureaucracy. I wished I could share his certainty. But knowing my father, I suspected the real battle was just beginning. My intuition proved correct the very next morning. I was helping the technical team access one of the more remote sections of our property when I heard the distinct sound of vehicles approaching, multiple vehicles moving fast. By the time I made it back to the main clearing, 3 black SUVs had pulled up alongside the state vans. My father emerged from the first vehicle, followed by Derek. From the second came 2 men in suits who screamed lawyers, from their polished shoes to their stern expressions. The third SUV disgorged what appeared to be a private survey crew, carrying equipment similar to the state team's but branded with my father's company logo. What is all this? My father demanded, gesturing toward the state officials who had paused their work to observe the newcomers. I stepped forward, placing myself between my father and the technical team. This is a state assessment team from the Water Resources Board. They're conducting an official survey of the property. My father's face darkened. Without notifying adjacent property owners? There are protocols for this kind of activity. One of the state hydrogeologists approached, her clipboard in hand.
Sir, we have all necessary permissions from the property owners. Adjacent property notification is only required for drilling operations, which we haven't commenced. And you are? My father asked, his tone dismissive. Dr. Andrea Martinez, senior hydrogeologist for the State Water Resources Board. She handed him her business card with a polite but firm smile. May I ask who you are and why you've brought a private survey team onto private property? Before my father could respond, Mace appeared, having heard the commotion from where he'd been working near the creek. His expression was calm, but I recognized the tension in his shoulders. George, he acknowledged my father with a nod. This is unexpected. Apparently there are a lot of unexpected activities happening on this property, my father replied coldly. Care to explain why you've brought in state officials without proper notification? We don't need to explain our land management decisions to you, I interjected. Now, unless you have a court order, I'm going to have to ask you and your team to leave. Derek stepped forward, his expression a mixture of desperation and determination. Let's all calm down. We're here to propose a solution that benefits everyone. There's no solution needed, I said firmly. We're not selling the land. Period. This isn't about buying the land anymore, Derek said, surprising me. It's about a partnership. Partnership? Mace's voice held equal parts curiosity and suspicion. My father motioned to one of his lawyers, who stepped forward with a folder. We're proposing a development rights agreement. You maintain ownership of the land, but Westlake Properties acquires exclusive rights to develop water infrastructure and distribution systems. I exchanged a glance with Mace, reading the same thought in his eyes. They knew about the aquifer. How did you find out? I asked directly. My father's smile was cold. Did you think you were the only ones capable of conducting hydrogeological surveys? We've known about the aquifer for weeks. This was a lie. If they'd known weeks ago, they wouldn't have initially offered such a low price for the land. But I let it pass, more concerned about their current strategy. Then you also know that we're in the process of establishing a protection trust, Mace said. One that specifically prohibits commercial exploitation of the water resource. A trust that hasn't been finalized, one of the lawyers pointed out smoothly, and one that could face significant legal challenges. Dr. Martinez, who had been listening to this exchange with growing concern, stepped forward. I should inform you that the State Water Resources Board has initiated proceedings to designate this aquifer as a crucial resource under state protection laws. Any development would require extensive permitting and environmental impact studies, Quote, my father turned to her, his expression hardening. State bureaucracy doesn't concern me, Dr. Martinez. I've navigated permit processes for decades. This isn't a standard permit process, she countered. Crucial resource designation places the aquifer under direct state oversight. Commercial development would be strictly limited, if allowed at all. I could see the calculations happening behind my father's eyes, weighing options, considering strategies, searching for leverage. Finally, he turned back to me. Riley, be reasonable. The state will tie this resource up in red tape for years. Nothing will happen, nothing will be developed. With us, you could see immediate benefits, financial benefits, while still protecting the resource. Financial benefits for whom? I asked. For you and Derek, to bail you out of your investment disaster? Derek flinched visibly, but my father remained impassive. For everyone, he insisted, including you and Mace. We're talking about millions in development rights. You could live anywhere, do anything. We already live exactly where we want to be, I said. Doing exactly what we want to do. My father's mask of reasonable negotiation slipped slightly, revealing the frustration beneath. You're being childishly stubborn. This is business, not some environmental crusade. Actually, it's both, Mace said quietly, and we've already chosen our path. One of the lawyers stepped closer to my father, murmuring something in his ear. My father listened, then nodded curtly. We'll be back with a formal proposal, he announced, one that addresses the state's concerns while still offering you substantial benefits.
In the meantime, he turned to his survey crew. Pack up. We're leaving. As they retreated to their vehicles, Dr. Martinez moved to stand beside me. They won't give up easily, she observed. No, I agreed. They won't. Fortunately, neither will the state. Water resources like this are too precious to lose to private exploitation. She handed me her card. Call me directly if they return, or if you receive any legal notices. Our department has attorneys who specialize in resource protection. After they drove away, Mace and I retreated to our porch swing, watching as the state team resumed their work with renewed purpose. They're desperate, I said, still processing the confrontation. My father doesn't make personal appearances unless the stakes are enormous. The stakes are enormous, Mace reminded me. An aquifer of this size and quality, in the middle of a region facing chronic water shortages. It's worth tens of millions. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. What do we do now? We stay the course. The Protection Trust will be finalized by the end of the week. The state assessment should be completed around the same time. Once both those pieces are in place, your father's options become extremely limited. And if he tries something before then, Mace's expression grew serious, then we fight, with every legal tool at our disposal. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The state team continued their assessment, meticulously documenting every aspect of the aquifer. Dr. Abernathy worked overtime to finalize the Protection Trust, incorporating the state's preliminary findings to strengthen the legal framework. Mace and I moved between these projects, answering questions, providing data, and watching our vision of protection inch closer to reality. Through it all, I kept expecting another move from my father, perhaps a legal notice, maybe another unannounced visit. But there was only silence from the Winters family, which was almost more unnerving than active opposition. On Thursday evening, as the sun dipped low over our land, painting the scrubby landscape in hues of gold and amber, Mace's phone rang. He answered, listened intently for several minutes, then thanked the caller and hung up, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" I asked, setting aside the environmental impact report I'd been reviewing. That was James from the county recorder's office. Mace sat beside me, his movements deliberate. "Your father filed a lawsuit this afternoon." My stomach clenched. "Against us?" "Against the county, actually. He's challenging the property boundaries, claiming a surveying error from when you first purchased the land." "That's ridiculous. We had a professional survey done before closing. Of course it's ridiculous. It's also a delaying tactic." Mace ran a hand through his hair, a rare sign of frustration. If he can create enough legal uncertainty around the property boundaries, he might be able to delay the finalization of the protection trust and the state designation. How long could that delay things? If he gets the right judge? Months, potentially. I stood up, unable to sit still with this new anxiety coursing through me. Months during which the aquifer remains vulnerable. Yes. But James also said something interesting. Apparently your father filed the lawsuit alone. Westlake Properties isn't mentioned anywhere in the filing. I frowned, puzzled by this detail. What does that mean? I'm not sure, but it suggests this might be a personal vendetta now, not just a business strategy. The thought of my father pursuing this out of sheer pride or anger, rather than financial necessity, made the situation even more volatile. When my father took things personally, he became ruthless. We need to talk to Dr. Abernathy, I said, reaching for my phone. See if there's any way to expedite the trust filing. Before I could make the call, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. Vanessa, need to talk urgently. Can I come by tomorrow morning? It's important. I showed the message to Mace, who frowned thoughtfully. Could be a trap. Could also be valuable intelligence. I'll tell her to come, I decided, typing a response. But we should prepare for anything. Vanessa arrived the next morning, driving a modest sedan rather than her usual luxury SUV. She was dressed casually again, and alone. No lawyers, no Derek, no survey crews. Just my sister, looking strangely vulnerable as she stepped out of the car. I met her in the yard, Mace standing supportively at my side. Thank you for seeing me, she said, her voice subdued. I know things have been complicated. That's one word for it, I acknowledged. Your text said it was urgent? She nodded, glancing around at the state team's equipment still set up around the property. I see the assessment is still ongoing. Yes? They've been very thorough. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. Riley, I need to warn you, Dad is... He's not thinking clearly about this situation. We know about the lawsuit, Mace said. The boundary dispute. It's more than that. Vanessa lowered her voice, though there was no one nearby to overhear. He's obsessed with this land now, with the aquifer. It's all he talks about, all he thinks about. Because of the money? I asked. Initially, yes. But now... She shook her head. Now it's about winning. About not being outsmarted by his, quote, impractical daughter and her dirt-studying partner. Her use of air quotes made it clear she was parroting our father's words. And Derek? Mace asked. Where does he stand in all this? Derek is in survival mode. The SEC investigation is intensifying. He's cooperating, trying to save himself by providing information about others involved. Her expression grew pained, including Dad. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Dad is under investigation too? Vanessa nodded grimly. The questionable investments went through Westlake Properties' pension fund, as well as individual accounts. Dad was on the investment committee that approved them. So he's not just facing financial losses, Mace concluded. He's facing potential legal consequences. Exactly. Which makes this aquifer situation even more desperate for him. He sees it as his salvation, a way to recoup the losses before the SEC freezes assets. I processed this information, seeing the larger picture more clearly now. That's why he filed the lawsuit personally, not through the company. He's trying to secure the asset before potential penalties hit. Yes. And he's not thinking about long-term consequences or ethical considerations. He's just trying to survive. Vanessa looked at me directly. I'm telling you this because I'm worried about how far he might go. This isn't just business anymore. Why are you doing this? I asked. The question that had been nagging at me since her unexpected apology days earlier. Why turn against Dad and Derek to help us? Vanessa was quiet for a moment, her gaze drifting across the property that had become my home. Because I was wrong, she finally said, her voice barely audible. About you, about this place, about what matters. Just like that? After years of… No, not just like that. She cut me off, a flash of the old Vanessa's sharpness breaking through. It's been building for years, Riley. The emptiness, the constant striving for more, bigger, better. The hollow achievements and meaningless status symbols. She gestured toward our simple trailer, with its handmade porch. You chose this life, and I mocked you for it. But you have something real here. Something genuine. While I've been living in a beautiful prison of my own making. The raw honesty in her voice was impossible to fake. This was my sister, the real Vanessa, not the polished, perfect facade she'd maintained for so long. I believe you, I said quietly, but that doesn't solve our immediate problem. No, it doesn't. She straightened, shifting back to practical matters. Which is why I brought you this. She reached into her purse and extracted a USB drive. Dad's legal strategy for the boundary dispute and his plans for acquiring water rights if that fails. His lawyer left his laptop unattended during a strategy meeting at the house yesterday. Mace took the drive, his expression caught between shock and admiration. You stole your father's legal strategy? I copied it, Vanessa corrected primly. And yes, I did. Because this has gone too far. Because what you're doing here, protecting this resource rather than exploiting it, is right. And because you're my sister, and it's time I started acting like it. I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face, speaking words I'd never thought I'd hear from Vanessa Winters, corporate warrior and status seeker extraordinaire. I struggled to find the right words. A lot to process. I know. And I don't expect instant forgiveness or trust. But I wanted you to have this information, to be prepared for what's coming. She glanced at her watch. I should go. I told Dad I was meeting a friend for brunch, and he's been suspicious of everyone lately. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Vanessa? She paused, looking back. Thank you. For the warning. And for… I gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. The apology, the information, the apparent transformation. She smiled. A small, sad smile that contained more genuine emotion than any expression I'd seen on her face in years. It's the least I could do. Literally the very least. As her car disappeared down our dirt driveway, Mace held up the USB drive. Well, this changes things. If it's legitimate, I cautioned. Only one way to find out. We spent the next hour huddled over Mace's laptop, reviewing the contents of Vanessa's stolen files. They were comprehensive, detailed legal strategies, timelines, contingency plans, even psychological profiles of potential judges who might hear the boundary dispute case. This is thorough, Mace said, scrolling through a document outlining various legal challenges to our protection trust. Dad never does anything halfway, I agreed, especially when he's desperate. One file in particular caught my attention, a memo from my father to his legal team, dated just 2 days earlier. Listen to this, I said, reading aloud. All efforts must be directed toward delaying the trust filing and state designation. Once either is in place, our options become severely limited. Time is not on our side. Mace looked up from another document. They know they're racing against the clock. That's good for us. There's more, I continued reading. If legal delays prove insufficient, we should consider more direct approaches to securing access. Property owners can be persuaded through various means. That sounds vaguely threatening, Mace observed, his expression darkening. Knowing my father, it was meant to be. We continued sifting through the files, building a clearer picture of my father's increasingly desperate strategy. By the time we finished, one thing was abundantly clear. We needed to accelerate our timeline. I'll call Dr. Abernathy, Mace said, reaching for his phone. See if he can file the trust documents today, instead of waiting until Monday. And I'll talk to Dr. Martinez, I added. Push for expedited processing of the state designation. As we made our calls, I found myself thinking about Vanessa's transformation. Was it possible that amid all this conflict and manipulation, something positive was emerging? A sister reclaimed, A relationship rebuilt from the ashes of years of misunderstanding? It seemed almost too much to hope for. And yet, looking around at our land, this supposedly worthless dirt that had revealed such treasure beneath its surface, I was reminded that value often exists where others fail to see it. Perhaps the same was true of people. Perhaps beneath Vanessa's carefully constructed facade, there had always been someone worth knowing, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. These philosophical musings were interrupted by a call from Dr. Martinez. The news was better than we could have hoped. "We're expediting the crucial resource designation," she told me, her voice brimming with excitement. "The preliminary assessment results were so compelling that the board has agreed to an emergency filing. We could have official protection in place by early next week." "That's incredible," I said, relief washing through me. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she replied. "This aquifer is a once-in-a-career discovery. The data speaks for itself." After hanging up, I shared the news with Mace, who had just finished his own call with Dr. Abernathy. "The trust documents will be filed first thing tomorrow morning," he reported. "Abernathy is personally taking them to the county recorder to ensure there are no accidental delays." For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. "So by this time next week, this aquifer will be one of the most legally protected water resources in the state," Mace confirmed, pulling me into a celebratory embrace. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I gazed out over our land, the land my family had mocked for years, the land that had called to me when no one else could see its value, the land that now held the key to sustainable water access for an entire region. Sometimes the greatest treasures lay hidden beneath the surface, visible only to those patient enough, visionary enough, to look beyond immediate appearances. True of land, true of people, true of life itself. And in that moment, standing on soil that had been dismissed as worthless by those who measured value only in dollars, I felt a profound sense of vindication. Not the petty satisfaction of proving critics wrong, but the deeper fulfillment of having remained true to my own vision, despite years of doubt and dismissal. The battle wasn't over. My father would not surrender easily, and the coming days would undoubtedly bring new challenges. But for now, just for this moment, I allowed myself to feel the quiet triumph of persistence, of faith rewarded, of hidden value finally revealed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.